I almost gave up on YouTube. Not because I didn't want it anymore, but because it felt like nothing was working. I was posting, trying different ideas, putting in the time. And still, the views weren't growing. The subscribers barely moved. And after a while, it starts to get in your head. You start asking yourself, is this even worth it? Am I just wasting my time? I stopped posting for a while. Not because I had a plan, but because I felt stuck. And honestly, part of me was ready to quit. Chapter 1, The Silent Phase. The hardest part wasn't the low views. It wasn't the slow growth. It was the silence. Posting something, and then checking back later, and nothing had really changed. A few views. Maybe one like. Sometimes nothing at all. And when that keeps happening, it starts to feel like you're invisible. Like you're putting in effort, but no one is actually seeing it. At first, I told myself to just keep going. Be consistent. Trust the process. But over time, that motivation started fading. Because it didn't feel like progress. It felt like repetition. Doing the same thing, and getting the same result. And that's when something dangerous happens. You don't quit immediately. You just slow down. You post less. You delay uploads. You start overthinking everything. Until eventually, you stop showing up completely. And that's exactly where I found myself. Not officially quitting, but not really continuing either. Just stuck in between. And in the next chapter, I'll show you what I realized during that time. That completely changed how I see YouTube. Chapter 2, The Realization. During that time when I wasn't posting, I started thinking a lot about what was actually going wrong. At first, I thought it was the algorithm. Maybe my content wasn't being pushed. Maybe the niche was too competitive. Maybe I just needed a viral video. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something uncomfortable. It wasn't the algorithm. It was me. Not in a negative way, but in a very real way. I was starting, then stopping, then starting again, and expecting results to build. But YouTube doesn't work like that. It doesn't reward effort in bursts. It rewards consistency over time. And every time I disappeared, I was resetting my own progress. Losing momentum. Losing data. Losing the chance to improve. And then coming back, expecting things to change. That's when it finally clicked for me. The problem wasn't that I wasn't capable. The problem was that I wasn't staying in the game long enough for anything to actually work. And in the next chapter, I'll show you the simple shift I made. That removed the pressure and made it easier to keep going. Chapter 3, The Shift That Changed Everything. Once I realized what was actually going wrong, I stopped trying to do everything perfectly. Because that was part of the problem. Every time I wanted to post, I felt like it had to be great. The right idea. The perfect script. A video that would finally work. And that pressure made everything harder. So instead of posting, I delayed. Overthought. Second-guessed. Until days turned into weeks. That's when I made a simple decision. Not to be perfect. But to be consistent. Even if the video wasn't amazing. Even if it didn't get views. Just show up. And that changed everything. Because once the pressure was gone, creating became easier again. I didn't need every video to succeed. I just needed to stay in the game long enough to learn what actually works. And for the first time, it didn't feel overwhelming anymore. It felt doable. And in the next chapter, I'll show you exactly what I started doing differently. The simple system that made consistency realistic for me. Chapter 4, The Simple System I Follow Now. I knew that if I didn't change how I was creating, I was going to fall into the same pattern again. So instead of trying to do more, I decided to do less, but do it consistently. I created a simple system. Not something complicated. Not something overwhelming. Just something I could actually stick to, even when life gets busy. One long-form video a week. Not 10 minutes of perfection, just a clear, honest video that delivers value. And 2 shorts. Not 5. Not every day. Just 2. Focused, simple, and connected to the main video. That's it. Because I realized something important: growth doesn't come from doing everything. It comes from doing the right things, consistently. And this system gave me something I didn't have before. Structure. I didn't have to guess what to do next. I didn't have to wait for motivation. I just followed the plan. And suddenly, YouTube didn't feel overwhelming anymore. It felt manageable. And in the next chapter, I'll share the one mindset that helped me stay consistent, even when results were slow. Chapter 5, the mindset that kept me going. The hardest part about YouTube is not creating content. It's staying consistent when it feels like nothing is happening. Because results don't come immediately. You post, and nothing changes. You try again, and still nothing. And that's where most people quit. Not because they're not capable, but because they don't see progress fast enough. That's where I had to shift how I think. I stopped asking, is this working? And started asking, am I showing up? Because that's the only thing I can control. Not the views. Not the algorithm. Not how fast things grow. Just, whether I keep going. And once I focused on that, everything became lighter. I didn't need instant results anymore. I just needed to stay consistent long enough for the results to catch up. And that changed everything. Because now, I'm not waiting for motivation. I'm building momentum. Ending, why I'm not giving up. So no, I didn't quit. Even though I felt like it. Even though progress was slow. Because I realized something simple: giving up doesn't solve the problem. It just guarantees that nothing will ever change. But staying consistent, even when it's imperfect. That's where things start to shift. Maybe not immediately. Maybe not in a week. But over time, it builds. So if you're feeling stuck right now, like nothing is working, like you're putting in effort and not seeing results, you're not alone. And it doesn't mean you're failing. It just means you haven't stayed consistent long enough for things to start working yet. So don't focus on going viral. Don't focus on being perfect. Just focus on showing up. Again and again. Because that's how momentum is built. And that's exactly what I'm doing now. If you're on the same journey, subscribe, and let's figure this out together.